she's telling the truth about MS-13 in Virginia and Maryland.
Just changing subjects for 1 second. The administration has expressed a complete confidence in how all the deportation flights to El Salvador were conducted. But now that the administration has conceded that there was an error of one Salvadoran national, will there be any reviews conducted? And does the president express any thoughts on the one error that was disclosed in court last night?
Well, first of all, the error that you are referring to was a clerical error. It was an administrative error. The administration maintains the position that this individual who was deported to El Salvador and will not be returning to our country was a member of the brutal and vicious MS-13 gang. That is fact number one. Fact number two, we also have credible intelligence proving that this individual was involved in human trafficking. And fact number three, this individual was a member, actually a leader of the brutal MS-13 gang, which this president has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. Fact number four is that foreign terrorists do not have legal protections in the United States of America anymore. And it is within the president's executive authority and power to deport these heinous individuals from American communities. It is a promise he campaigned on. It is a promise he is keeping. And every single person in this room should be grateful for that, considering especially MS-13 is very prevalent and prominent here in the District of Columbia, in Maryland, and in Virginia. And the president, the attorney general, everyone who has been involved in these operations is focused on eradicating these criminals and terrorists from our communities.
The vice president said he was a convicted member of MS-13. What evidence is there to back that up?
There's a lot of evidence, and the Department of Homeland Security and ICE have that evidence, and I saw it this morning.
Thanks, Caroline. A few questions about this deportation case. First, I wanted to clarify something that you said to Jeff a few minutes ago. You said you'd seen evidence that this man was a convicted gang member. In what court was he convicted, and for what?
This individual was an MS-13 ringleader. This individual was also engaged in human trafficking. And I'm glad you brought up this point again, because I would like to point out that if you just saw the headline from the insane, failing Atlantic magazine this morning, you would think this individual was Father of the Year, living in Maryland, living a peaceful life, when that couldn't be further from the truth. They didn't even mention in the title of that article, or even in the first paragraph, that this individual is an illegal criminal who broke our nation's immigration laws. He is a leader in the brutal MS-13 gang, and he is involved in human trafficking, and now MS-13 is a designated foreign terrorist organization. Foreign terrorists have no legal protections in the United States of America, and this administration is going to continue to deport foreign terrorists and illegal criminals from our nation's interior.
But a judge ordered that he should remain in this country, so are you saying that it is okay to ignore a judge's ruling if you don't like it?
Who does that judge work for?
It
was an immigration judge who works for the Department of Justice at the direction of the Attorney General of the United States, whose name is Pam Bondi, who has committed to eradicating MS-13 from our nation's interior. And let me tell you why we've made this commitment. MS-13, may I remind each and every one of you, is a brutal and vicious gang. They raped and strangled a 20-year-old autistic woman to death in Maryland. They hacked 4 people to death with machetes in a park on Long Island. They have kidnapped, sexually tortured, and shot a teenage girl in Texas after she insulted them, allegedly. Killed and mutilated a 17-year-old girl in Virginia, stabbing him 16 times and cutting off his hands. They beheaded and cut out the heart of a man in Washington, D.C., They raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl in California. They sex trafficked a slew of young girls, including one who was just 12 years old. Raped an 11-year-old girl in Brooklyn while her brother was in the room. Sex trafficked a 13-year-old in Maryland and Virginia, miles away from this White House, even beating her 26 times on her backside with a baseball bat. Pressured homeless New Yorkers to undergo unnecessary surgeries such as spinal fusion in order to bolster their fraudulent lawsuits. These are vicious criminals. This is a vicious gang. And I wish that the media would spend just a second of the same time you have spent trying to litigate each and every individual of this gang who has been deported from our country as the innocent Americans whose lives have been lost at the hands of these brutal criminals. We maintain our position, and very strongly so. plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork that needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane. So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. You just get...
There's a group of Venezuelan men down in Texas who have been alerted that they are soon going to be deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Have you authorized that operation, and where are they going to go?
I don't know about the group you're talking about, but if they're bad people, I would certainly authorize it, yeah. You know, I won an election in a landslide. We won all 7 swing states. We won by millions of votes. We won 2,750 districts to 505 districts. 2,750 to 505. That's why the map, when you look at it, is all red. And one of the biggest reason, I think the biggest single reason, actually, I'd like to say it's because of this, because I think they're going to come up with things that are incredible. But probably the biggest reason was because of the border, because of illegal immigration. And the people of this country want those people out. Because what Biden did, and I don't know if he did it, I'm not even sure he knows what the hell he was doing, but what his people did, representing him, was allow millions and millions of people from jails, from prisons all over the world, people from mental institutions and insane asylums, gang members, drug dealers, pouring into our place. And you know what? Our people voted for me to get them out. They want them out. They want them out. And we've done a hell of a job. And by the way, Ecuador and various places, but El Salvador, we've been helped by a lot of other states where they're helping us, actually. Because you couldn't, look, what this man was thinking when they allowed open borders and people to come in, if you look at Venezuela, their crime is down by 72%. You know why? They took all their criminals off the street. They took all their prisoners from jail. They took murders. 11,088 murderers were released into our country. Bad things are going to happen. Bad things. So we're getting them out. And that's why I was elected. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that. And we're doing it in record fashion. We have the safest border, the most secure border we've ever had. See the Declaration of Independence? You should all read that before you leave. That's the real deal. You should all read it before you leave. Yeah.
Mr. President, photos have emerged of Senator Van Hollen sipping what appears to be margaritas with Abrego Garcia down in El Salvador. Do you encourage other Democrats to fly down to El Salvador to meet with this illegal alien who's an accused wife beater?
I like this guy. See, now this is the kind of reporter we like. There aren't enough of them. We got to get some more of them. But no, I appreciate that question. No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. If you would go into the room, you might, if you would, Carolyn, maybe go into the room and see if you can find that little slip. I wrote some things down. I don't know why you'd want to keep him, but I just, we got a little biography of him.
Did you help set up that?
Not a very innocent guy.
Yeah.
On the IRS,
Mr. President, in the spirit of Easter Sunday. And
while we're on the subject, right?
Yes, of course.
So you're talking about Abrego Garcia? Is that the one? Yeah. Is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist. This comes out of the State Department and very legitimate sources. I mean, I assume I'm just giving you what they handed to me, but this was supposed to be certified stuff. In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua. It may be worse. They kill people with knives because it's more painful. very famous for the knifing and killing of two young 16-year-old girls walking to school one day, and they sliced them up into little pieces and killed them. That's MS-13. And two separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13. When Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money pouring out, an MS-13 gang symbol, that he was driving with two other known violent MS-13 gang members, two of the most violent members that we know of in the MS-13 gang of thugs. In 2022, Garcia was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol and was found to be transporting 7 people from Texas to Maryland, and he had no driver's license. He was driving violently. In 2020 and 2021, Garcia's wife filed for a protective order from him and said he was violent and abusive and really scary, including allegations that he punched and scratched her on the eye, left her bleeding after throwing her laptop on the floor at her, ripped her shirt, and ripped off her shorts. He then grabbed her arm, leaving very severe marks. Garcia's wife also wrote in court, "At this point, I am afraid to be close to him. I just don't want to be close. I have multiple photos and videos how violent he can be and all of the bruises that he's left on me." She just couldn't get anywhere near him. This is the man that the Democrats are wanting us to fly back from El Salvador to be a happily ensconced member of the USA family. Isn't it a shame? And by the way, I've been hit pretty hard by fake shows, fake news, MSDNC in particular, where they talk about how evil I am, that this man would be thrown out of our country. This man is according to certified statements that we get, is a very violent person. And they want this man to be brought back into our country where he can be free and to stay as a happily Maryland, they call him the Maryland man. He's a Maryland father. No, this is a violent person. Who they don't talk about is that wonderful angel mom who lost her daughter, who had 5 beautiful children, and she was killed violently. And, she spoke, and she spoke unbelievably. I saw it. And the fake news didn't pick it up. She spoke. She was in tears. She's devastated. Her life is, essentially, she's told me her life is like over. But there was I think no stories. Isn't that true? No stories. 0 stories. It was the most emotional thing. Everybody that watched it, they couldn't believe it. The fake news refused to put it up. So it's very sad. And yet they talk about this guy like he's an angel. See the angel up there? They think he's like that. Like a little angel.
Do you encourage?
But Zelensky's still deeply wary after his disastrous Oval Office meeting in February.
You don't have the cards right now.
Tonight, one glimmer of hope. Russia and Ukraine each releasing around 250 POWs. In the largest swap of the war. Wrapped in the flag they fought for and happy to be home.
For 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine, 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 and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014
and
2014?
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, GD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you see what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President.
No, I haven't been to Ukraine, but I watched the news and I played Call of Duty on Xbox. JD Vance, right there at that moment, you became the world's biggest loser. You suck. This guy's fighting a real war. The way you guys treated Zelensky on this day was so disrespectful.
We also have new reporting tonight on the alleged assassination attempt of then-candidate Donald Trump. What the suspect at the president's Florida golf course on that day allegedly tried to get his hands on before that day, including anti-aircraft weapons. Here's Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, months after his dramatic arrest, federal prosecutors releasing disturbing new details which they claim show Ryan Ruth's apparent obsession with assassinating President Trump. Before he allegedly stalked Trump on his Florida golf course, prosecutors say Ruth, a fierce supporter of Ukraine who had visited the war-torn country multiple times, reached out to an associate there. His request, send me an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, or Stinger surface-to-air missile. Prosecutors claim Ruth desperately wanted to blow up then-candidate Trump's plane, writing, I need equipment so that Trump cannot get elected.
President at the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Of course, this is coming on a day when the U.S. and Russia were meeting to talk about the very fate of Ukraine. Zelensky did not have a seat at the table. But the president was asked specifically about that just a short time ago at his Mar-a-Lago resort. He fired back at Zelensky, suggesting that he could have stopped the war 3 years ago.
I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
You could have made a deal. You should have never started it, of course. Well, that is not just a misstatement of history, of course. Russia invaded Ukraine, as we all saw and witnessed 3 years ago, nearly to this date. But Russia also has the history of Ukraine. I mean, when during the first Trump administration, their incursion was spreading and growing. But the American president did not stop there. He went on to essentially belittle and question the authority of the Ukrainian president. He said his approval rating was at 4%. There is no evidence to back that up. The latest poll from a couple months or so ago was right around 50%. Never mind that, he also questioned his leadership and said that there should be new elections. Now, of course, there have not been elections in Ukraine because martial law was called because of the Russia invasion. But we'll take it all together here as this is coming as peace talks are just dramatically intensifying between the U.S. and Russia, as we saw in Saudi Arabia. There's no question that Odd man out here, and Trump was very eager to fire back at Zelensky and certainly not defend him today, Wolf.
Truly outrageous comments. Jeff Zeleny, thank you very much. All of this comes...
In what has become an almost regular weekend event, massive protests once again popped up in major cities across the country today. People rallying against President Trump and his agenda. It comes after the Supreme Court stepped in early this morning to halt a new round of deportations. Vaughn Hilliard has more.
Tonight, protests across the country, from Denver to Midtown Manhattan, to right outside the White House, people voicing anger at the Trump administration, including over its recent immigration actions.
Everyone should have due process. No one should be just taken away and locked up.
This as the Supreme Court today telling the Trump administration to halt its deportation flights of some detained Venezuelans in Texas, individuals it is claimed are gang members and should be deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Today, Judy Maldonado Rawl driving 6 hours from El Paso to the Bluebonnet detention facility. Her husband, Eduardo Daboin Rawl, a Venezuelan national, among them.
Why did ICE say that your husband was detained?
Because of his tattoos.
In this video she shared, her husband making a plea hours before his then imminent deportation and denying he is a member of the Tren de Aragua gang, saying we are simply being unjustly judged because of our tattoos. Daboin Rawl's wife says he came to the country legally in 2023 through a parole program, which the Trump administration has since tried to eliminate. But a federal judge earlier this week temporarily blocked that effort.
Has he been charged?
No, we don't have any charges. He's never been given anything.
NBC News was not able to locate any state or federal criminal records for Daboin Rawl. On Friday night, he says he was among the Venezuelans heading to an airport at the exact same time a federal judge heard arguments from lawyers trying to stop the men's deportations.
They were told, well, you were lucky you were sent back because you were going to El Salvador, not Venezuela.
Then they turned back to the ICE facility.
Tonight, I'm Lindsay Davis in for David. We begin with a federal judge blasting the Trump administration, threatening a contempt investigation over what he called a willful disregard of his order to halt deportations to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Judge James Boasberg is accusing the administration of a hurried removal operation. The planes landed in El Salvador, even though he ordered them to turn around. The judge is now preparing to launch an official contempt investigation, which could include requiring testimony under oath and appointing an independent lawyer to prosecute the government for contempt. Caught in the conflict, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, the Maryland husband and father the administration admits was wrongfully sent to El Salvador. A unanimous Supreme Court ordered the administration to facilitate his return. Today, the White House said he will never live in the United States again. In his ruling on contempt, Judge Boasberg wrote, the willful disobedience of judicial orders without consequences would make a mockery of the Constitution itself. ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott leads us off from the White House.
Tonight, a dramatic escalation in the battle between the White House and the courts. A federal judge threatening a contempt investigation into the Trump administration for deporting more than 200 Venezuelan immigrants to a notorious prison in El Salvador, despite his order to turn the planes around and return to the United States. Judge James Boasberg declaring the administration displayed a willful disregard for his order, determining there was probable cause to find them in contempt. The judge now preparing to launch an official investigation, which could include officials testifying under oath. He even raises the remarkable prospect of appointing an independent lawyer to prosecute the government for contempt. President Trump has praised the deportations, claiming without evidence the men are violent gang members, inviting El Salvador's president to the White House.
You've done a fantastic job.
But the administration tonight facing mounting questions about the fate of this man, Kilmore Abrego Garcia, last seen head shaved in that Salvadoran prison. Abrego Garcia, an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador, was working and living in Maryland with his American wife and children when he was put on that plane because the government made an administrative error, a mistake they acknowledge.
Tonight, the Trump administration resolute that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is not coming back to the United States
despite a Supreme Court order to facilitate his return from a notorious El Salvador prison. The White House posting this taunt on social media, directed at Senator Chris Van Hollen, who met with Abrego Garcia Thursday night and posted this picture of the meeting. On Truth Social, President Trump said the senator, quote, looked like a fool, insisting Friday voters approve of his immigration actions, which are facing several challenges in court.
We're getting him out, and that's why I was elected. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that, and we're doing it in record fashion.
The White House claims Abrego Garcia was a member of the violent MS-13 gang, citing police reports. His family denies that. Abrego Garcia has no criminal convictions in the U.S. or El Salvador. His wife, overjoyed to see new images of him.
The most important thing for me, my children, his mom, his brother, his sibling, was to see him alive, and we saw him alive.
A federal court Thursday ordered the White House to, quote, take all steps to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return, further stating that the government's unwillingness to bring Abrego Garcia back should be shocking, not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear.
This is not about him per se. It is about adhering to our processes, and due process is embedded in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The Trump administration maintains the matter is out of their hands.
I think we removed the bad guy from this country who was down at home in the custody of his country. And this country has to make the decision to release him.
El Salvador's president writing, he's getting the honor of staying in El Salvador's custody.
And in that court ruling against the Trump administration yesterday, Judge Harvey Wilkinson wrote that regardless of whether or not Abrego Garcia is a gang member, he is still entitled to due process. Melanie Znona, NBC News, Washington.
I almost feel sorry for Donald Trump right here. No, I don't. This is where he's going to really make a fool out of himself.
Okay, let's move on to immigration.
Coming up.
It is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods.
President Trump, the first 100 days continues.
Okay, let's move on to immigration. And as you said, it is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods. And so I want to ask
about my message?
Methods. About your methods. How you're accomplishing
they seem
this.
to work.
Do you acknowledge that under our law, every single person who gets deported gets a hearing first to make their case?
Well, are we talking about people that are citizens of our country or not?
No, you're not deporting citizens at this point.
Well, let me ask you, did they get hearings when Biden allowed 21 million, because I think the number is 20 million people to flow into our country? He had 21 million people that came into our country through a stupid open border, and they were prisoners, and they were people that you don't want in many cases in our country, right? They came from all over the world. They came from the Congo. They came from South. They came from all over the world. We're talking about some of the roughest countries in the world they had here, including terrorists, by the way. Now, but did we give them a hearing when they came in?
Well, the law requires that every single person who is going to be deported gets a hearing first.
Well,
do you acknowledge that?
I'll have to ask the lawyers about that. All I can say is this: if you're going to have 21 million people, and if we have to get a lot of them out because they're criminals, we're going to have to act fast. We can't. Do you think we can give 21 million trials? Let's say each trial takes 2 weeks. Is that what you want us to do?
The law is the law, sir. The law is the law, and you're
the law doesn't say anything about trials.
No, not trials, hearings.
These people came in, they're not citizens. They came in illegally. They came into our country illegally.
And
we have to get them out.
There's a legal process for that.
I can't, sure, and we follow the legal process. I can't have a trial, a major trial for every person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in
They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out.
They're
And we have to
bad
get them
guys,
out fast.
really bad guys. But in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
But they get due process.
I want to say this, right? A lot of Americans agree with Donald Trump on the border stuff and immigration, illegal immigration. A lot of Americans agree with Donald Trump on that. It's everything else he's doing that we don't agree with. But we do agree with him on the getting rid of all the illegal people over here. I'm going to say a lot of Americans agree with that.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers say.
Right. All right, let's talk about the Venezuelans. You deported more than 200 Venezuelans to that prison in El Salvador. You say they're violent, they're gang members, they're terrorists. Many of them don't have a criminal record at all.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. If you take a look,
I want to read you something.
Excuse me. When you look at those people, they were violent people. They were violent people.
But many of them don't have a criminal record
Go
at this
ahead.
point.
That's what you say.
I want to pause this. Most Americans agree with Donald Trump on the immigration. That's a fact. Most Americans agree on the immigration, but there's a part coming up that's funny.
Oh, it's based on their lawyer, what their lawyers have said. Okay. Joe Rogan said this. Joe Rogan, one of the leading podcasters, Trump supporter, about the deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said, was dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. Is Joe Rogan right?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, we want to be careful, or we are careful. We're doing something that has to be done. We have a country that's very sick. Joe Biden, and it's not him because I don't even think he knew what the hell was happening, but the people around him are vicious people. And what they've done to the country is unbelievable. They've allowed 21 million people to pour into our country. Many of these people are criminals. They've allowed you mentioned Venezuela, the jails of Venezuela to be emptied into the United States. Do you know Venezuela crime is way down? Way down. You know why? Because their criminals are now living happily in the United States of America, and we're getting them out. And I was elected to get them out, and we're getting them out.
Under the law.
And we're getting them out fast, and we're getting them out legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened the other day where a judge was protecting a criminal was horrible. And I think she's got big problems, frankly. And there are a couple of them like that.
I want to talk about one
Wait a
man.
minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges. And we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
Well, let me ask you about one man and one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, and just so you understand, the person that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay?
Here's the funny part right here. Donald Trump's calling this guy MS-13 gang member. But the picture is coming up. The picture is going to be photoshopped, and he thinks it's for real.
This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands,
He came
sir.
into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has
he's
ordered
not.
you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he is.
Supreme Court says what the law is.
Listen, I was elected to take care of a problem. It was a unforced error that was made by a very incompetent man, a man that turned out to be incompetent, that you always said was wonderful, a great genius, right? And now you find out, all of the media now, they're saying what a mistake they made. A man who was grossly incompetent allowed us to have open borders where millions of people flowed in. I campaigned on that issue. I wouldn't say it was my number one issue, but it was pretty close. I campaigned on that issue. I've done an amazing job. I have closed borders. He said you couldn't do it. You wouldn't be able to do it. It would never happen. Well, it happened, and it happened very quickly. Wait a minute. When we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it. And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
But
over
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
This is the funny part. Most of the times, Republicans don't like to be fact-checked because they lie so much. But the one time Donald Trump tried to keep it for real, the MS-13 has been photoshopped on this man's face. That's hilarious. And Donald Trump thinks it's for real. That MS-13 is photoshopped. Whoever put the MS-13 is trying to say that his tattoos represent MS-13, but it's been photoshopped. And Donald Trump's trying to argue the one time.
Wait a minute. Terry.
He didn't have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was photoshopped.
That was photoshopped, Terry.
This is the funny part. It was photoshopped. And Donald Trump thinking it's for real, thinking the guy got MS-13. But it's photoshopped, Donald Trump. You see, here's a picture of the guy's tattoos without the MS-13 being photoshopped on there. They photoshopped the MS-13 part.
Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I'll move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but
they're there in that picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at that,
Why don't you just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested. Ukraine.
All right, coming up, guys. Here's some more Republican asshole stuff. And I like these ladies, man. They are funny as hell, but they tell it like it is.
We have finally been revealed who is Big Balls.
Big Balls. That should be obvious.
Why do they call you Big Balls?
I just said it as my LinkedIn username.
Okay.
Well, people on LinkedIn take themselves like super seriously, and they're pretty adverse to risk. And I was like, well, I want to be neither of those things. So I said it, and honestly, I didn't even think anyone would notice.
Couple things here. Number one, Can you imagine owning a business or running a Fortune 500 company and saying, you know what, let's put big balls in charge and let's run around and call them big balls. And just imagine for a minute if Biden had an advisor at the State Department advising Anthony Blinken, his U.S. Secretary of State, named Big Balls. The meltdown, we would have to get a fire truck and 5 ambulances to get Jesse Waters and Sean Hannity to the hospital. But yet we're rolling around, we're joking. Okay, another thing. This guy says, well, I want to take chances. Everybody's so serious. Working for the government is serious. Taking people's benefits is serious. Taking food away from the most marginalized, poorest people, that's serious. Cancer research, it's serious. So we have this guy who is Elon Musk's big balls because he takes chances. Clearly, he's not old enough to, rent a car by himself. And we have this guy laughing it up with Elon Musk, who has just been the biggest disaster. And Jesse Waters, it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to the United States government. It's an embarrassment to every American. And just remember, Big Balls has access to every single bit of your private data. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. But here's what's even more jaw-dropping. Fox News cannot even tell you what Trump's accomplishments are. Here we have, this is what Fox News is listing. President Trump's accomplishment: declassified the JFK files, but might I remind you, not the Jeffrey Epstein files, because he's in those records. Ended federal support for paper straws. Are you fucking kidding me? And ended production of the penny. Now, they did forget he did change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, so let's add that to him. And I'm like, this writes the script for the Democrats moving forward. This is what you accomplished. You tore down the American government. You made Canada hate us, basically withdrew us from NATO. It's unbelievable. You've got China that is pissed off beyond words. We've got all these tariffs. The economy's crashing, but at least no more federal support for paper straws. And then if it's not bad enough that paper straws is our biggest accomplishment, we've got even Brett Baer. Even Brett Baer, whose lips go directly on the ass of Donald Trump at every turn. He can't even hide how bad the economy is, and then it's directly to be blamed on Trump and his tariffs.
Economy shrank. First time in 3 years. People are pointing to the tariff policy. There are people looking at their 401ks that are worried. What do you tell them? Is this going to work?
So the first thing is, when you talk about the economy, this is Joe Biden's economy, and we inherited $2 trillion of
economy
debt,
in the world.
highest
Okay,
peacetime
stop.
deficits in America.
Okay, here's the deal. He inherited the best economy in the world, and the debt that Trump added in his first term is far larger than Biden. And what Trump wants to do, because he doesn't want to tax billionaires and corporations, is going to send the debt even further. That's why he's so adamant in his big, beautiful bill to lift the debt ceiling. So JD Vance, you're a liar, and Fox News, your viewers are finally seeing just a tiny bit of truth. I know you like to, wrap it all up, but there's a tiny bit of truth there. So next, we're going to talk about the Mike Waltz firing. It's the first one. He's the first one to go in the Trump administration. We know it's a revolving door of employees. Honestly, I'm surprised we made it through the first 100 days with the same people that started. But Mike Waltz, if you recall, is the one that invited the Atlantic reporter on the bomb war plans group chat on Signal. He does the fist bump emojis when it's talking about fighter jets. In my opinion, Pete Hegseth should have been the first to go, but I think Mike Waltz was the first to go, and I'll get into that later because he got lured. But here is Mike Waltz just 24 hours before he got fired, kissing Trump's ass.
President, the last 4 years, the world experienced a total lack of zero leadership under Biden, and then we had 100 days of your leadership with respect, with strength.
You're a dumbass. You were always going to take the fall because he's too embarrassed to replace his hand-picked Fox News anchor. So you're the first to go. So he's out. Here's my question. This is his guy. This is his first guy. How bad is number 2? I mean, the B team has got to be horrific if this is the A team. And Mark Kelly, I thought he had some great thoughts. Remember, he's military. He knows this stuff. Astronaut, former military, U.S. Senator. Here's from Mark Kelly on the firing of Mike Waltz.
Hey, everybody. Today, the president fired Mike Waltz, the national security advisor. I think they fired the wrong guy. They should have fired Pete Hegseth for his sharing of information, classified and sensitive information on that signal chain. But what really worries me here is, why did Mike Waltz get fired? Laura Loomer, an internet troll, is claiming credit for this. Does she now get a say as to who our next national security advisor is? If that's the case, I think we should all be very, very concerned.
And I just want to remind you, on the Loomer, I'm going to play you a clip. She was on a podcast, and here's what Laura Loomer said about national security and what she conveyed to Trump.
The other week, when you were able to, basically put in some suggestions that President Trump fire the national security apparatus, and your input outweighed the national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Did you express any concerns to him about Mike Waltz?
My concern was, if Michael Waltz is the NSC director and or the NSC advisor, and he is saying that he's personally vetting these individuals who have a history of anti-Trump remarks and anti-Trump associations, why would he be signing off on them? And then it reminded me of a video that I've saved in my phone for many years of Michael Waltz on video speaking out against President Trump when he first ran for president, accusing him of being against service members. And so, I was about to show this video to President Trump, and then Michael Waltz, walked into the Oval Office. I could play the video. It just makes me wonder.
So when you went to that meeting,
Play the video. Let's just play the video.
He essentially called anyone who was captured in combat a loser. It's something that I just personally can't stomach.
He's a war hero. 5.5 years. He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured.
Don't let Trump fool you. Look into his real record and stop Trump now.
He essentially called anybody captured in combat a loser. It's something that I just personally, can't stomach. So if you can't stomach it, why do you want to work for President Trump? If you can't stomach it, why do you want to work in the administration?
My question to Laura Loomer is, why can she stomach that? Why can she stomach the President of the United States calling captured military members losers? I mean, why can anybody stomach that? Why can all these national security, rah, USA, hump the American flag patriots stomach that? It is so gross and disrespectful. And
Anybody captured in combat a loser. It's something that I just personally, can't stomach. So if you can't stomach it, why do you want to work for President Trump? If you can't stomach it, why do you want to work in the administration?
My question to Laura Loomer is, why can she stomach that? Why can she stomach the President of the United States calling captured military members losers? I mean, why can anybody stomach that? Why can all these national security, rah, USA, hump the American flag patriots stomach that? It is so gross and disrespectful. And here, yesterday, after the firing of Michael Waltz, here's what we had. Laura Loomer.
Before we came on, I literally got a text from Laura Loomer saying "loomered." I mean,
A verb.
a verb.
So
Now a verb. Wait, but she's verbing herself? She's verbing herself, yes.
So Laura...
Secretary, I've never seen anybody this incompetent, and there is not a day, Chris, that goes by that I don't hear from the military or from the intelligence community that their morale is deteriorating because this kind of behavior is going on from Hegseth, from Waltz. I got to throw Tulsi Gabbard in there as well. There's never been a director of the national intelligence that almost on a daily basis condemns the intelligence workforce and calls them out somehow as all deep state individuals. These kind of actions across this national security group in Trump administration is making our nation less safe. And I think Waltz will have to provide answers. and I'm glad he's out of that position. But boy, oh boy, I'm not going to rest until Hegseth, and I also think Tulsi Gabbard are removed from their positions as well, because they are undermining, the security of our military, our intelligence forces, and are frankly destroying confidence of our allies that we can keep any kind of secrets safe.
So if indeed Donald Trump found himself drowning in the fallout from his own demand that the American people make do with less so that he can raise tariffs, those tariffs that are damaging our economy and our standing in the world. A wave of brand new reporting suggests that there's more Trump-inflicted pain to look forward to. We played Donald Trump's comments for you here yesterday, but it bears repeating, because the candidate who promised day in and day out on the campaign trail that he would lower prices on day one is now telling all of us out loud, too bad, you're going to have to pay more. Watch.
Somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
Maybe the shelves will be open, empty. Oh, well. Here's the cover of the normally Trump-friendly New York Post. It says it all. Take a look at this. Skimp on the Barbie. Trump admits tariffs will raise some prices, cause shortages. Barbie shortages. This is what we're getting with Trump 2.0. Trump's comments on Wednesday capped what has been weeks, actually months, of Donald Trump's millionaire and billionaire stacked cabinet downplaying, if not outright dismissing, the real anxiety this creates and the pain caused by the Trump administration policies.
Access to cheap goods is not the asset, is not of the American dream.
Americans who want to retire right now, the Americans who have put away for years in their savings accounts, I think they don't look at the day-to-day fluctuations.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month. The armies of millions of people. Well, remember, the army of millions and millions of human beings screwing in little screws to make iPhones. That kind of thing is going to come to America.
No, it isn't. There are no screw-making assembly lines coming to America. And people who look at their balances and their savings and their retirement, that's everybody. That's all of us, all the time. And skipping a Social Security check if your 94-year-old mother is your mother, I'm guessing it doesn't hurt. What are they talking about? And now, the war on Christmas. Trump telling the country's children there will be fewer toys to look forward to this year. New York Times reports this, quote, this Grinchy pronouncement by the president had the value of being truthful. Many American toy makers and retailers have started to pause their orders as the effects of Trump's tariffs ripple out, threatening to snarl supply chains. It could all have a big impact on this year's holiday season, since it takes months to manufacture, package, and ship many products to the U.S. But the impacts are expected to be felt sooner than that. NBC News is reporting this, quote, President Donald Trump's massive China tariffs are jeopardizing American fireworks shows, threatening to drive up prices and limit supplies. U.S. fireworks.
You notice how since Donald Trump got rid of DEI hires and Elon Musk firing all the people, have you noticed now you're seeing more and more airplane crashes and near misses? Blame it on Donald Trump and Doge.
Tonight, close calls in the skies and the summer travel warning ahead of Memorial Day. Weeks after a deadly mid-air crash between a helicopter and a regional jet, 2 more flights had to abandon landings because of a military helicopter nearby. The transportation chief blasting Pentagon leaders tonight. And the ongoing chaos at a major hub airport stacking up hours of delays for inbound flights. The new warning about why this could be a coming attraction across America. Job numbers better than expected, but the economy is shrinking, what the president tells Kristen Welker tonight about the risk of a recession in an exclusive interview. Plus the breaking news, Temu halting packages from China, what it could mean for you. A fiery crash near Yellowstone, leaving 7 people dead. What went wrong? Good evening and welcome. Tonight, troubles in the sky and on the tarmac for an aviation system that lately has generated more than its share of worrisome headlines. Newark Airport once again today at the center of an air traffic crush that has left flyers enduring hours-long delays rippling well beyond the New York area to airports near and far. Officials blaming the breakdown on FAA staffing shortages and equipment issues. Newark is a major connecting hub for United Airlines. Tonight, its CEO in a letter to customers says it's now clear that Newark Airport cannot handle the number of planes that are scheduled to operate there. Scott Kirby writing United is unilaterally canceling 35 round trips a day from our Newark schedule starting this weekend. The U.S. Transportation Secretary warning the issues impacting Newark air traffic could happen at other airports as the summer travel season gets into high gear. And separately today, Sean Duffy blasted the military over close calls between an Army chopper and 2 commercial jets on Thursday at Washington's Reagan National Airport. It's where we start tonight with senior correspondent Tom Costello.
Just 3 months after a mid-air crash between a military helicopter and a passenger jet at Reagan National Airport, the NTSB and the FAA now investigating another close call. On Thursday, a military chopper flying to the Pentagon, identified as PAT-23, deviated from its flight path near Reagan Airport, the tower ordering the pilot to head west towards the Pentagon landing pad.
Proceed westbound now. Proceed westbound now.
With the military chopper violating minimum separation rules between aircraft, the controller ordered Delta and Republic flights to cancel their landings and go around.
Delta 1671, maintain 3000, go around 3000. Going around 3000, Delta 1671.
After January's crash that killed 67 people, the FAA ordered a halt to chopper flights around the airport that aren't police, medevac, or national security, including Marine One. Today, a clearly frustrated transportation secretary.
And I don't know who's on this helicopter, but if we're transporting generals through that airspace because they can't get in an SUV, they can't take an Uber, but they have to take a helicopter, that is wrong.
That investigation comes as Newark Airport has been hit with days of hours-long delays following air traffic control equipment failures and staffing shortages. 20% of the workforce walked off the job. Late today, the CEO of United Airlines, with a big hub at Newark, announced it is cutting 35 round-trip flights a day out of Newark starting this weekend, writing, "We feel like there is no other choice in order to protect our customers." Secretary Duffy warning it could be a sign of things to come this summer.
And Tom, circling back to that close call at Reagan Airport, any word from the Pentagon tonight?
Our Pentagon team has learned from 2 U.S. officials that the chopper had 2 pilots and 1 crew member on board, rehearsing an emergency evacuation plan at the time, and there were no general officers on board.
All right, Tom Costello, thank you. We turn now to our exclusive interview with President Trump.
Blame it on Donald Trump. All your firings and Doge and Elon Musk. There you go. And Pete Hegseth. The worst Secretary of Defense in history. We went from Donald Rumsfeld, a real Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, 4-star general, to Pete Hegseth, weekend Fox News correspondent. And you wonder what happened? Donald Trump, you always talking about fake news. Everybody in your cabinet, your regime is fake. You fake. You the only president that never served in the military. Pete Hegseth was like a weekend warrior. Your whole staff is fake. It's not one person in your cabinet that's professional. They all fake. No credibility. I'll take that back. I think Pam Bondi is the only person that's real. She was a lawyer. Everybody else fake as hell.